switching it up a little bit and showing you guys a quick tutorial on lighting low poly. As you've noticed on the channel, Hayden and I have been doing a little bit of low poly lately, and I figured lighting in Cinema 4D for low poly was something you guys might like to see. It's raining outside, hopefully you can't hear it, but yeah, I've got a couple examples here. It's a quick little tree Hayden and I made, my low poly isometric thing that I did little ways back, island, and this kind of rock water thing, and a quick background I made. Lighting in these are pretty simple. You'll notice I always have this background, well, not always, but most of the time I have this background, which I like for the lighting on low poly. It gives it a nice little background. I didn't do it in this one, but yeah, I made a background with just that. So I'm gonna hop in and I'll show you guys probably this project in Cinema 4D, so I'll be back in a second. Okay guys, so now we are in the Cinema 4D project for this picture right here. Now the first thing you're gonna notice obviously is these are not the same colors. I'll try and get this right here. You'll see these are nowhere near the same colors. I was referencing a picture off the internet to do this, and in that picture it had a purple light from sort of this back direction and a yellow light up front, and this was pretty much matching the lighting of the picture we found on the internet. And then we messed around editing it in Photoshop a little bit, and we came to the conclusion that this looked, considerably cooler than I think I have a picture of it when it was rendered out with just those colors. With those colors, it looks super washed out and crazy. And you can see the light actually over there. Some thunder. Yeah, it's really coming down outside, so hopefully it doesn't interrupt the video too much. But yeah, as you can see, pretty much these are the textures that we used, or I used in this. Hayden was here while I was making this. Got some blue for the water, and basically these things are just white. This is kind of an off gray, and that bluish green is the background, I think. So we'll go out of the camera real quick here and we'll take a look at the scene. Really simple render, but it looked pretty cool. And basically what I used for the lighting for this was, if you have cinema and you're getting serious into modeling and 3D text, anything like that where you need some good lights, there is a light pack. It is called Grayscale Gorilla. It does cost money. I'm sure there's ways to find it on the internet for free, but whatever. Really good light pack, and I use these overhead softboxes. Let's see if I can get them into the camera, and these just provide some really good overhead light. And for low poly, shadows are really important. So you notice on the scene I have these 3 lights right here kind of encompassing the whole scene, and they're pointing at a bit of an angle going down this way, and basically that's making it so that it'll have a bright light sort of behind it, and it'll be projecting shadows forwards so that we could get these front-facing shadows on these peaks. Looks really nice, and also in the clouds you can see the shadows are in the front. So basically, when you're doing low poly, especially with little objects like this tree, you want to think about where it's going to cast a shadow, because low poly shadows are going to be very hard edged, and it's going to be very important, like the direction and the intensity that it casts it. So we've got these high intensity lights kind of facing down this way at a bit of an angle to create that forward casting shadow, and to lighten those forward shadows so that in the render it wasn't just completely black, I have this light here. And if I can go into these settings, so we've got these 3 here. There's 3 of these lights. The intensity is at 43% or 42%, and then you'll notice that I have 1 over here, and that was just to kind of soften up the shadows here so they weren't just completely black, because you know, it's always nice to have not black, but you know, kind of a darker shade of like these yellows and stuff. Yeah, and so again, going back to these materials, they're all really light colors, like these little shape. Ooh, don't know what I did. All right, these shapes here in the ground are actually just white, and then I've created these purples and yellows with other lights. So we've used these overhead softboxes to kind of create some global illumination sort of light. I wouldn't recommend using the lights in Photoshop for your main lighting source. They are good for color, like in this render. I don't know if you can see it. I'll zoom in on the recording, but to the right there is a little yellow orb, and that is one of these lights. That's a purple one. Yellow. Yeah, duplicate these twice. So to the back here we have a purple light, and these are just lights in Cinema 4D, and that's how I've gotten these colors. I've used these overhead softboxes for kind of the global light, and then I've used the purple, as you can see definitely from the back, to cast a very bright sort of purple shadow. And then we've got some yellow lights towards the front to cast a bit more of that yellow glare in the front, kind of like a sunlightish deal. And this is kind of the way I'd recommend doing it, is using those overhead softboxes for your general light, and then lighting it with colors just from Cinema 4D. Just go here into light. Pretty simple. You just gotta think about it as if it was, you know, actual lights hitting it, you know, how you want your shadows to cast onto objects in your scene and onto each other. But that's about it for the actual lights inside the Lightroom. Pretty simple. Good softboxes definitely are needed to get, you know, get the best lighting possible. But also, you've got some render settings too that are gonna increase the quality of your shadows, and this is again a really important thing for low poly, because your shadows are so like straight edged, and like they're very hard shadows, as opposed to some softer, you know, more blurred edge shadows. So we'll go through my render settings here real quick on this project. I've got my dimensions as my desktop background, because obviously I'd planned to use this as my desktop background. Got my resolution set to 300 DPI. That's a pretty good resolution, 300, 350 in there. It'll leave your render turning out nice. And I've saved it, you know, obviously as a PNG, all that good stuff. And then you'll notice down here, if you haven't edited your render settings at all, I've got two that you won't have: ambient occlusion and global illumination. And these are just some more lighting presets. You go into effect and they'll be in here. They're out of here because they're checked on this list. But for this render, I've checked on ambient occlusion, and I don't mess with this at all. I'm sure you know, there's more that you could do to this to change it, but I've never messed with it. And then I've gone down here to global illumination. I have it set to IR still image. And then if you go down to, I think, irradiance cache, how you would pronounce that, got all these, and for this render I knew it was going to be very close up on the objects, so I've set all these to as high as they could get, you know, very heavy, very high. And this took forever to render. As you can see, pretty simple scene, and this took about half hour, 45 minutes to render. So yeah, pretty long, but the global illumination and ambient occlusion really do help the shadows a lot. They just give it a that little extra bit in the shadows just to make them look really nice. But yeah, so that's one of the lightings. We'll go, sorry for my desktop's crazy messy right now. Go back into this folder, and we will open this floating island. Now for this floating island, we've got basically the same deal going on with the lighting. As you can see, you know, these colors aren't crazy or anything. And then we'll zoom out, and I've done a little bit of a different thing here. Rather than having it at an angle, I didn't want too much of a shadow to cast on the background. As you can see in the picture, I've gotten, you know, almost no shadows reflecting off the island on the background, which is the way that I wanted it. And the way I did that was straight up and down lighting with the softboxes. I've got the same Grayscale Gorilla light boxes here, and I believe, yeah, okay. So they're both the same intensity, and I've got one facing up and down, and that is to create light while creating sort of minimal shadows from the angle that it was viewed at. And yeah, for this one, those are the only lights I used. This one I kind of made the colors more with the actual materials, but with low poly it's pretty easy to create materials because they're basically just one shade, you know, gray, green, sort of brownish. I've got these buildings are sort of red, and I've got this kind of sparkly silver for the roofs and the side bits around, and then some water, obviously, some like clear reflective material. But yeah, lighting for low poly really is pretty easy. All you have to remember is, you know, where you want your shadows to be. This tree is a really good example, obviously, because I wanted it to go right to the left. You just gotta think about, you know, what your lighting is gonna do and how it's gonna cast shadows down on the rest of your project. And here we got another project. I'll show you guys this one real quick. Alright, so we've got the same sort of ooh, I don't know what happened. Zoom out. Got the same sort of background here. Again, I didn't want this to have any shadows casted on it, so as you can see it's very far away from the rest of the project. And then I've got the Grayscale Gorilla light boxes here with the intensity turned down a little bit. I've got 3 here just so I could get good lighting and make sure there wasn't too many hard shadows on the scene. The texture kind of glitches out for the glass on this render, or the grass on this render, but yeah, as you can see, you know, I've got some good back shadows, but there's not too many hard shadows. Got a little plane and everything, and yeah, guys, that's about it for this one. If you have any questions about tips for lighting or anything that I might have missed on this was a pretty quick, simple tutorial. But yeah, hopefully this helped you guys in your low poly lighting. It's really easy. It just takes a little bit of practice and some tweaking with the lights. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you'd like to see more low poly, not just lighting, but actual modeling tutorials. And yeah, guys, I'll see you guys next week.